In the wild, non-human primates engage in various same-sex sociosexual interactions. Bonobos use these behaviors to regulate group tension and establish nonverbal social bonds. Similarly, Japanese macaques routinely form cooperative same-sex alliances. These interactions occur naturally, driven by biological impulse, hierarchy negotiation, and affiliation, operating entirely without structured guilt. This data visualization maps the stark difference between those natural baselines and modern human outcomes. On the left, we see the high frequency of animal sociosexual variation. On the right, recent UK government health data shows an age-standardized self-harm rate of over 1,500 per 100,000 for sexual minorities, more than double the rate of the heterosexual population. That massive psychological burden does not stem from the biological variation itself. The suffering is a direct response to the surrounding society. We can measure this friction as strain, the physical and psychological tension generated when an internal biological identity collides with rigid external human structures. High levels of distress in human sexual minorities are engineered byproducts of civilization. We take natural variations and subject them to high-load systemic conflicts. To locate where strain originates, we map human sexuality onto a 5-layer diagram. The base internal layers are anatomy, identity, and attraction. Friction here is primary incongruence. Then 2 massive external structures press down: behavioral expression and the social recognition layer of laws and norms. Cultural systems use this top recognition layer as a control mechanism, linking moral worth to marital and reproductive patterns. When this layer applies heavy downward force, it creates secondary incongruence. External rules demand behaviors that violate the internal self-model, forcing inner layers to buckle. This structural hostility forces individuals to expend massive internal energy just to maintain basic psychological continuity, leading directly to chronic fatigue and distress. We can calculate the total psychological burden using the Brain Kinematics Model. This physics-based equation plots total strain, S, as a function of specific internal and external variables. The first term looks at the absolute distance between a person's inner identity, I, and their actual public expression, E. Strain increases proportionally as that gap widens. The second term measures the social penalty. If an individual maintains high expression while societal rigidity, R, is also high, the interaction multiplies and the resulting strain explodes upward. This sets a mathematical trap. To avoid the severe social penalty, individuals drive their expression down into concealment. But lowering expression artificially widens the gap with their inner identity, forcing the internal strain back up. The single mitigating variable in the system is adaptive support. Community affirmation acts as a mathematical dampener. As support increases, it directly subtracts from the total strain output. Living under minority stress is a continuous, exhausting optimization problem, maximizing authentic expression while carefully minimizing the risk of rigid social punishment. We can visualize every survival strategy by plotting the BKM equation onto this 3D Cartesian phase space. The x-axis represents social rigidity, the y-axis tracks expression, and the vertical z-axis shows the resulting total strain. In the high rigidity, low expression quadrant, the topology forms a steep, elevated ridge. We call this the hidden state. Occupying this ridge requires maintaining a severe split between a private self and a public role. The prolonged suppression minimizes immediate social danger, but ensures chronic internalized exhaustion over a lifetime. Moving to the high expression, high rigidity quadrant reveals a second elevated ridge. This is the expressive state, born of visible resistance and social conflict, where the individual refuses to hide, but absorbs heavy societal punishment as a result. Between these 2 hostile peaks lies a deep, low-strain valley, the balanced state. Here, inner identity matches outward expression, and surrounding social rigidity is low enough to permit it without penalty. Effective psychological treatment and social progress do not aim to force people into hiding or push them into hypervisibility. The objective is to navigate the system down into the balanced valley of continuity. We can plot historical figures directly onto the space. Alan Turing serves as a perfect coordinate for global discordance. Turing possessed a highly coherent internal system, but the British government's prosecution acted as an absolute social blockage, a rigidity level of 1. It destroyed his career trajectory and introduced unsurvivable systemic strain. When direct behavioral expression is completely blocked, individuals often seek an adaptive strategy. The painter Frida Kahlo occupies the coordinate for symbolic transformation. Unable to resolve severe physical and societal strain directly, artists often redirect that unresolved tension into structured visual outputs. Looking at Kahlo's work, the canvas operates as a surrogate phase space. She actively negotiated bodily conflict, gender presentation, and pain directly through her visual compositions. In the kinematics model, art is a mathematical redirection of unresolved systemic strain. For individuals trapped in the hidden state without an artistic outlet, unresolved strain shifts into the subconscious processing field. This alters their dream architecture. Instead of routine performance anxiety, those suffering identity society incongruence systematically report dreams centered on exposure, discovery, and fluid role shifting. These dreams evolve through 4 distinct phases: suppression, conflict, exploration, and finally integration. The dreamscape functions as a low-constraint simulation space, testing alternative configurations for identity alignment. The presence of intense, fragmented dreams serves as a diagnostic signature of a mind laboring to process an artificially elevated societal strain load. The frequency of intense, boundary-pushing expressions of identity often spikes in societies that have recently liberalized. This timeline graph plots expression over time, driven by the kinematic differential equation of change. The rate of expression depends on the tension between inner drive, social rigidity, and accumulated strain. After generations of high social rigidity, massive residual strain accumulates within the population. When a society suddenly drops its cultural rigidity, this built-up strain forces expression to spike mathematically, overshooting the baseline identity need. This spike is a kinematic overshoot. It is a temporary phase of rapid strain discharge, identity signaling, and cultural resistance, not a permanent state. These patterns of provocative behavior reflect a highly predictable dynamic, a pressurized system equalizing itself after long-term suppression. Returning to our 3D phase space, we see a single data point slide off the high-strain ridges, finally settling at the bottom of the balanced valley. Rigid societal norms maintain their apparent stability by forcing minorities to absorb the resulting strain, a process of exported cojones, where social order is achieved by pushing the cost of category simplification onto the few. Medical and social interventions fail when they attempt to force the individual's inner identity to match a rigid society. To lower the aggregate psychological burden, the system itself requires editing. We must dismantle institutional blockages and scale up structural support, allowing the system to naturally find its equilibrium. Human variation is a permanent biological fact. The architecture of our societal rules dictates whether that variation becomes a localized tragedy or a stabilized continuum.